Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us again, the Football Diary podcast. And I'm joined by Myles today, just me and him. Yeah, good. How's things?
All right, mate. All right, living the dream, watching as much football as we can, really, at the moment.
I know we're getting quite sport, aren't we? The amount of football we're seeing. That's the best thing about an international tournament, though. It's like 3 games a day. So, yeah, really enjoyed it so far. We last spoke on Monday. There's been quite a few big games happened since then, hasn't there? There's been the Group of Death.
Yeah.
Or the Group of Life, as I've heard it called. That's a nice description because, there's some big teams in action there. I think a few people are saying that Group F, is where the eventual winners may come from. So we'll talk about that. Wales obviously had a great performance against Turkey to win 2-0. Italy keep on winning 3-0 against Switzerland again. So, yeah, plenty to talk through. Loads of highlights. For you, Myles, what have you enjoyed in the last few days? What's been the standouts for you?
I definitely enjoyed the Italy game. They again showed a lot of class. They're controlling whatever they can. Switzerland were really, really poor, to be fair. But I think Italy have really announced themselves in this tournament. They look determined to do something, and that's really important. I enjoyed particularly the second half of the Belgium-Denmark game. Obviously, big game that. A lot of mixed emotions going into it. I think even the Belgian players will have felt very reflective going into that game, particularly people like Lukaku, who obviously are very close to Eriksen.
Yeah,
that would have been a tough game to psych yourself up for, but it turned out to be a pretty good watch, particularly when De Bruyne came back a lot earlier than I think many people would have expected. And him and Hazard came on and had a real impact, which is encouraging for Belgium, although they still look very poor at the back. And like you say, Wales getting a win, it's nice to see. I mean, Turkey basically handed it to them, if we're 100% honest.
They were poor again, weren't they? I mean, that's a big surprise for me is how bad they've been. You know, they were found out massively, even against a team like Wales. And Wales aren't at top form, let's face it. And they still made Turkey look really poor. So
defensively, they were just awful. I mean, how many times did they want to see Gareth Bale play a ball straight down the middle for Ramsey to run onto and beat their off the trap? It happened at least 3 times before he scored. And you just thought, you've seen Soyuncu play so well for Leicester. Demiral is not a bad defender either. He's at Juventus. Yet they both just look amateur. None of them were picking Ramsey's runs up. And that's exactly what you expect someone like Aaron Ramsey to do. And that was the biggest difference. Turkey going into it looked like they had a fairly good team, fairly well organised, but probably lack the world-class cutting edge. Yeah, they've got Yilmaz who's done well. Probably wouldn't call him world-class. Çalhanoğlu's a good player, but when you saw Bale and Ramsey, that's what world-class players can do in a side, and they just cut through them. I mean, obviously Bale had the penalty miss, which is one that he'll probably want to forget quickly. He nearly made up for it very quickly as well, but Turkey just looked all over the place, to be honest.
Well, I think Bale made up for it with his Oran game anyway. It was one of the best games I've seen from an individual at a tournament for a long time. And I think Gareth Bale was due a performance like that. He's had a rough season, really, hasn't he? A rough couple of seasons. And he was everywhere. And the second goal, where we all assumed he was going to play for time in the corner flag, and he just went sneakily directly into the penalty box and set up for the winner. I thought that was a really clever move. But he tried it twice in the dying minutes, and they didn't pick him up at all from that. So again, Turkey were as bad as Wales were good.
Yeah, I don't think it was that sneaky. Turkey just looked like they'd stopped playing.
Yeah,
they just gave up. They were like, yeah, okay, we've lost this game now. Even though it was only 1-0. It was really weird the amount of time they gave Wales to do that. And obviously, like, Wales have got some options in that team. If you think that they've got Dan James, who's got this electric pace, they've got Bale and Ramsey, which we all know about. But then you've got players like Harry Wilson as well. And you think there's a bit of depth there. David Brooks, like, there is some attacking talent in that team. Maybe not the clinical number 9 that you'd expect. But they showed what they could do, and they showed what, if their big players turn up, what could happen. So fair play to Wales. And actually finishing second in that group gives them a really good run for quite a while. You'd imagine they'll play probably Denmark in the next round. And then I think after that, it's Holland. And I don't really think they've been very impressive either. So all of a sudden, Wales could look at a semi-final again.
Who'd have thought?
I don't think you would have said that. Yeah, definitely not. I think I put Turkey getting through to the semis because of the run that they would have. But if Wales can capitalise on that group and get through a second, fair play, they'll do really well out of that, I think. Because I don't
think Wales have got a better team than 2016 then, looking at it on paper?
Do I think they've got a better team? I'm not sure if I would say they've got a better team, because a lot of it's quite similar and they've just kind of replaced like for like in a few areas. I think the defense of the 2016 team inspired more. Ashley Williams was in great form at that time. Ben Davies is still there, but plays a lot less. Neil Taylor had a really good tournament, and I've seen him fall off a cliff at Villa. So I'm not sure whether I would say they've got a better team now. I just think they're using that experience from 2016. There's still a few players from that camp still around, and they've just built on that atmosphere again. Wales seem really, really together, and they did at the last tournament as well, and it's encouraging. You can see Scotland trying to harness that as well. That if you just take the right mentality into a tournament, get your fans behind you, try and play the best kind of football you can, then that's really important in this sort of setting when you're playing games really quickly. And actually, Wales would have had every reason to be derailed going into this with what's happened with Giggs. So 100%. Fair play to them for putting a couple of good results in already. It looks like they're through now, which is great for them.
It is. It's mega. I mean, their route to the final, I didn't actually think about that. But if they have got as kind the next couple of games as looks like it might be the case, then they'll be looking at that and thinking, do you know what, there's an opportunity opening up for us here. And rightly so, because it's a favourable half of the draw, isn't it? But you talked on Belgium quickly as well. I just want to talk about them. You've watched them pretty closely, haven't you, because of your roots. They, for me, remind me a bit, potentially. I think it's more because they've got Roberto Martinez in charge of the golden generation of England when Sven was in charge. And sometimes they can turn on a world-class performance. And some of the performances at the World Cup were awesome. I think they beat Brazil like convincingly, didn't they, for example? But occasionally, I think it's probably the defence as well. They look like they could slip into mediocrity. So what Belgium do you think are we going to see from here on in? Because Eden Hazard's not fully fit. He's not the player he was. But there are so many people at their peak around him. Like De Bruyne made such a difference. Lukaku looks incredible, doesn't he? So what Belgium are we going to see, you know?
It's one that has to lead from the front. They don't really have a choice. Their best form of defence is going to be their attack. Just keep the ball as much as possible, because, to be honest, that defence doesn't inspire anyone. They're very, very fortunate that they've got such a world-class goalkeeper behind them to try and organise it a bit. But Vertonghen's legs look gone, really. Alderweireld isn't really the player that he was when Belgium last turned up at a tournament. And Denayer, it was yesterday, wasn't it, the Belgium game? That was awful. He just made mistake after mistake after mistake for the goal. And you think that's where they're vulnerable. If you can just get at that back line, then you're going to have some success. The problem is getting the ball off them and getting not getting overwhelmed by that attack. Bear in mind, they've still got De Bruyne came on in the second half. Now, when he starts starting games, you might not have that early opportunity that Denmark took yesterday. They also have Axel Witsel to come back, which should help them solidify things a little bit. Although he's in midfield, he will drop back and he will cover those spaces and make up for the lack of legs that Vertonghen's got. But if he's coming back from an injury, who knows how well he can do that. They play such an odd system, and they were kind of playing Torgan Hazard as like a wing back yesterday as well. And that's just not his natural position. And Martinez has tried that a few times. He tried it with Carrasco at one point as well. And Chadley last time as well. He just doesn't have the depth in full. I don't really blame him. He doesn't have the depth when it comes to fullbacks to cover that position very well. So I think as long as Belgium can keep possession, then they look clinical, but you worry about them every time they lose it. Lukaku was outstanding again. The movement for both goals, really, but particularly De Bruyne's, the way he picks the ball up and travels with it, he beats 3 defenders and then lays it off. He kept playing the pass before the pass, and you could see that's a very intelligent version of Lukaku. That's a new side to his game that we can really appreciate. So I think well done to him as well. He's really stood out so far, which you would kind of expect with the form he's had. But I don't know with Belgium. They don't inspire me a lot. I don't think they've had the biggest of tests yet. And I think when they come up against a side that can punish that back line, I think we could see Belgium exit quite quickly, sadly.
I think the Belgian back line, they play a back three, basically, don't they, with the 2 wing backs as well, whoever they may be. And I've never seen a more immobile back 3 than the 3 they played with. And they've got Boyata as well on the bench. And I'm thinking it's not that great a quality, is it? So, how far can they go? Depends on on the front line and how many goals they can score, really, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
But I mean, it was an interesting first half of that game because Lukaku was pretty isolated. They were just playing sort of long balls to him for the most part, which I didn't get. And obviously, that seemed like Lukaku at Manchester United in the worst, darkest days when he had no service, basically. But as soon as De Bruyne came on, what a difference to both of them. They've got such a good understanding between them, haven't they? So,
yeah, massively.
Depends on them, really.
Their international records are both outstanding, and Hazard too. You've got three of their best players of all time, really, playing in the same team right now, it feels like. And I know that sounds like it might be a bit too much focusing on the present, but the stats back it up too. Lukaku's their leading goal scorer of all time, and Hazard and De Bruyne are both right up there too. What they could create together, if the three of them are fit, playing and clicking, yeah, of course, that would damage any team. And there aren't many defenses that could cope with that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to see a fully fit De Bruyne and Hazard playing in this tournament. De Bruyne might not need it. He might get back to speed quite quickly because obviously it was only a facial injury with him. So you imagine he's still there. But you worry about how fragile that is. I noticed he wasn't wearing a mask or anything. You just expect it these days, but who knows? I think if we could see peak Eden Hazard in this team still, they'd carry him through to at least a quarters or maybe a semi. But with the defence they've got, no, they don't inspire me a lot, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I picture them up against France, who we'll come on to in a bit, and you can see holes appearing quite quickly, can't you, really? So that's worrying for them.
I think when I did my predictions for who would play who, I think they got third place in that group as well. And I think I had it as Germany. I don't really know how that works with the third place teams, but if they got a Germany or a France or Portugal who could finish third in that group, remember, they'd be straight out, I think.
We lost you for a second there, Myles. Your signal kind of cut off a bit, so we'll have to say that bit again. So yeah, the bit I got to, I heard you saying that at the start you were talking about predictions, and that's as far as
when I did my predictions, I had them coming up against Germany in the next round, although I don't know how it will work with the third place teams. But if they do get third place from that group, you imagine they'd go out. Unless it was Germany. Maybe they could give Germany a game, but I'm not sure. So we'll see how far Belgium could get. I think they'll suffer from the same thing that England might have. Their next round draw might just be one of the tougher ones. But we'll see.
I remember talking about Gareth Southgate maybe playing for second place because of the draw being kind of that way. I don't think he will now, to be fair. But I don't think... It's so unpredictable who plays who in the next few rounds. It's difficult to kind of plot a route. And you're going to come up against, I think, one of these massive favourites anyway, aren't you? So on that note, Group F, what did you make of the first games we saw of Portugal? And obviously 3-0 victory there against Hungary, which was late coming. And then also France squeaking a 1-0 victory against Germany as well, who actually, I think for expected goals, Germany had more, which was interesting to note. What did you make of those two games? Any favourites there? Anything changed for you?
Not really. It's hard to critique the Portugal performance because, it looks fantastic on paper, 3-0 win, brilliant, but doesn't really tell the story of the game. It could have very easily been a really difficult result for them. If they drop points to Hungary, all of a sudden you'd worry because that's the team that all three of the other sides are looking at going, we have to win that game. And it looked for a moment like Portugal would not win it. They even looked like they might lose it at one point. Hungary obviously had the ball in the back of the net and it was rightfully ruled out for offside. But that seemed to wake Portugal up a bit and think, no, we can't let this happen. And they really stepped it up. Partly they stepped it up, partly Hungary collapsed. 2 goals very, very quickly. Both kind of, I think it's probably harsh to say the first one was an Orban mistake, but obviously it deflected off him. And then Ronaldo just decided, it's time for me to step up again. And he showed that even at his age, even as long as he's been around, he still has that class. Obviously, the penalty is a penalty, and they've got a lot of capable takers in that side. Obviously, it's probably weird for you as a Man United fan seeing someone other than Bruno Fernandes take a penalty when he's on the pitch.
Weird for him probably as well, but you can't really not step aside, can you?
You knew Ronaldo was going to take it. But his second goal was just beautiful. It was such good football between the two of them, the back and forth. And Hungary's defence just fell asleep. It was just so obvious to follow the runner. And none of them decided to pick him up. And this is Ronaldo we're talking about. If you're not going to follow Ronaldo and track his run, then that's so poor. But it was quick thinking, it was intuitive. And all of a sudden we saw the Portugal that you kind of hope that you will see through the tournament. Diogo Jota
snapshot, mind you. It's only a few minutes of it, but hopefully that's the start of them actually coming into some kind of form now, because it was a frustrating 80 minutes or so for them. And I think the main reason why it ended up like it was because Hungary were just physically and mentally knackered from tracking them for so long. And to be fair, they defended brilliantly, and Portugal didn't turn up, I don't think, until there was that breakthrough.
I think you'll see some changes in the Portugal side, although they've obviously got to be probably a bit more cautious in their next two games. But I wonder whether they'll drop Renato Sanchez back into midfield just to give them that extra option of creativity as well. He'll do the running, he'll do the tracking back when he needs to, but he is more of a creative option than someone like William Carvalho. I really think that Diogo Jota didn't cover himself in glory. Maybe João Felix would be a good option to consider. You've got to always think about the fact that Ronaldo these days is a lot more stationary normally. So you're going to have players who are willing to make that movement. And Portugal are pretty blessed in the fact that they've got Jota, Felix, Rafa. They've got a few players that will do that for them. And he looked good when he came on as well, actually, Rafa. But I would love to see João Felix play. I'm not really sure how he fits in that side when you've got Ronaldo and Bruno. But I think his movement could be really, really crucial for them. And I think he'd probably unlock a few more defences than maybe Jota looked like he was going to the other day.
I think he's another player like you mentioned with Jack Grealish. You've got to start him really for him to get a feel of the game, because he's one of them creative players that will kind of find his way into the defence, won't he, eventually? I think he needs to start really if he's going to get any kind of impact. I can't see him coming off the bench and turning the game really, you know?
No, me either. But to be honest, looking at that group as a whole, it wasn't as inspiring as you thought it would be. I think France and Germany, you expected to probably be a bit more cagey. First game of the tournament, neither side wants to lose. So I think they both kind of were just sanding each other out for too long. And one moment of real unfortunate defending led to a winner. And that was it. After that goal, I think we could have all turned our TVs off and said, this is going to finish 1-0, because both sides were just going to try and be careful not to make it worse. Obviously, Germany wanted the win and kind of went for it. But I didn't see anything in either of those sides that I thought, oh, yeah, here we go. They're going to run away from it. I didn't see that in Portugal either. I thought, actually, France didn't look as clinical as they probably should have. Obviously, Mbappe had that goal disallowed, as did Benzema. But I feel a bit conflicted when people go, oh, yeah, but they were brilliant because they scored those offside goals. Well, yeah. Closing the name there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe that doesn't really count, does it?
Mbappe shouldn't be getting offside. Let's be honest. Against a defence that contains Hummels and Kimmich at right back, when that's not really where he plays anymore, Mbappe does not need to be offside. We saw it. At one point, he picked the ball up and skipped past the defender and sprinted forward. Yeah, and you think, yeah, that's fine. You can afford to give the defender a yard or two, to be honest. So I think they need to be careful of that. I wonder about the chemistry between Mbappe, Benzema and Griezmann, because they kind of all, other than when Mbappe likes to drift out wide, they kind of all occupy quite similar space at times. True. Benzema and Griezmann particularly. I think Benzema is not a false nine, but you can see that he does drop a bit deeper to pick the ball up and then get into the box and play on that 9 and the 6-yard line. And Griezmann does the same. So I wonder where they fit together. And I do see the benefit of having Giroud in there sometimes, because I think he's a different kind of player to Benzema. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that rotated at some point. But yeah, I didn't look at France and think, oh, wow. Pogba looked brilliant.
I was going to say, hold your horses. The midfield generally looked pretty impressive. Pogba had the game of his life. I've not seen him control a game as much as he did for that 90 minutes. I thought Rabiot did pretty well. And also Kante, obviously, was everywhere. I think the three of them did well. And I think the service to the forwards was good from Pogba. I mean, that pass was probably a bit slower than it needed to be for the Benzema goal, wasn't it? So that was the only criticism of that. But if that had come off, what an impressive link-up play that would have been, you know, an assist for him as well. So
the ball for the goal as well that Pogba plays. I mean, we've seen Pogba do that. Pogba has that in his locker all day. A little outside of the boot, lovely through ball. It's fantastic pass that was. And that's the kind of Pogba you want to see, where he feels like he has the freedom to express himself. And it's going to be rare for him to get that in midfield for Man United now that Bruno is there.
Yeah.
But you notice it when he plays on the left-hand side. When he gets a bit more attacking license and freedom, he'll hit those balls. And that's what you want to see in a player like Paul Pogba. He clearly loves playing for his country.
Yeah.
He clearly loves it. And wouldn't you if you had Kante next to you, to be honest? But yeah, he looked really impressive, actually. That is a good point. But short of that, I still think France can be got at. I don't think that their defence is as good as it should be when you think of the long list of players that France could put in that back line. I mean, Germany had a fair few chances. And I think a side that were a bit... I don't think Germany are particularly good. Remember, Germany lost 6-0 to Spain not that long ago. This isn't a vintage Germany side. Very so true. I do wonder with France, when we see them tested again, how they'll step up. But I'll be interested to see.
I thought Germany, again, looked solid. But you're not going to win a tournament looking particularly solid, are you? I think going forward... they're relying on the Chelsea link-up, aren't they, between Havertz and Werner? And that's not really blown up at club level. So I think even at international level, are we going to expect to see anything different? No, probably not, because it's a very similar sort of system to the Chelsea system, isn't it, going forward? So I'm not massively overwhelmed by the prospect of Germany. I thought they might have shown some flashes of something, but they're still quite a young team. Maybe the next tournament will be the tournament for them to sort of come good, especially if Havertz and Werner actually sort of continue to play together for Chelsea for a few more years. That might actually come to fruition. Yeah. But France, again, cagey, cautious, sussing out Germany. They all need to get a result against Hungary, don't they? Let's face it. Yeah. But for me, Portugal, France might be the one that sort of decides who takes the momentum to take that path to the final, because then for me are becoming the two favourites on that side of the draw anyway, because I think Italy are on the other side from what I remember.
Yeah.
But again, it depends who finishes first, second and even third to dictate where, so who knows?
Let's be honest, I think every England fan right now would say that they want Germany to finish second in that group.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Out of the three of those teams, they're the side that I think, England would match them pretty well. Yeah. I think we would really get that back line. I think we could really, really do some damage there. And their midfield isn't what you expect it to be, because Kimmich is playing right back, which really frustrates me to see, to be honest. I understand that you might not feel that you have the option of someone better, but it's just such a waste of him, because he's such a waste, an influential figure in the middle of the park. I look at that. Toni Kroos is a fantastic footballer, but he doesn't cover that much ground. And I think you saw that when Chelsea played Real Madrid in the Champions League. The midfield was just so open because Kroos just cannot do that kind of running anymore. So I would love to see Calvin Phillips's energy and Mason Mount's energy against that German midfield now, to be honest. And when was the last time you could have said that a very average England midfield could probably do a good job against Germany? Because let's be honest, this isn't a vintage England midfield either.
No. Not by a long way, yeah. I think that's a sign of the times for both of those teams, isn't it, really, that their midfields are so short quality. But moving on to Italy next, because I know they've impressed you. They've impressed everybody, let's face it. They're still not being talked about as a tournament favourites, because I think there's a feeling that this run's going to come to an end at some point and they're peaking too early. Are Italy peaking too early? And how will they come up against the likes of, say, France or Portugal or England?
I don't think it's a case of peaking too early at all. I think they're just doing a very professional job. And that's what you want to see at the early stages of the group. If you feel like you've got lighter opponents than you might face later in the tournament, then good. Build that confidence. They're not sneaking by with 1-0 wins. They're dominating games and scoring goals. 6 goals in 2 games in any major competition is fantastic. And let's be honest, a lot of people were earmarking Turkey as dark horses. Switzerland are a team that often do qualify for these tournaments and get through to the next round. So it's not the easy run that maybe someone like the Netherlands have had so far.
Yeah.
They're out there and they're beating pretty well recognized teams. So fair play to them. I think the best thing for Italy is they seem like they have the same sort of things we said with Wales. What a spirit they seem to have. You see them belting out their national anthem at the start of the game, and you see the way that they celebrate every single thing that they achieve on the pitch, not just the goals. And you think they understand each other. And this is a team that I think we said last time, they're probably missing 2 of the players that probably would have started in midfield going into the tournament, in Pellegrini and Verratti. Now, all of a sudden, Locatelli looks like he's irreplaceable. I know, obviously, he scored his first ever brace this week, which I think is really interesting. He's not a goal scoring midfielder, but I think he's had a great time at Sassuolo, and he won't be there much longer by the looks of things. Barella's been fantastic. I think for a while now, he's really stepped up. I remember when Conte joined Inter, he said that Inter wouldn't be able to compete for a title when they were signing players of the likes that they were. And one of the players he was referencing was Barella. He thought, yeah, it's just an average player who's going to fit into my squad. And actually, he's come on so far that he's probably Italy's best midfielder right now. He's been absolutely fantastic. And we've seen the Jorginho that we saw at Napoli. I think he's been brilliant as well. He just dictates the pace of games.
Well, the way you're talking then, you're sounding like there's not going to be a way back into the team for Marco Verratti at this rate. Who drops their place for him?
I don't know. That is honestly, it's a good point that Verratti is probably Italy's talisman in many ways. Obviously, they have Insigne, but Verratti is such an embodiment of what Italy want to achieve, and he's such a fantastic midfielder. But how do you make that call? It's like England to an extent now. None of us really would have said Calvin Phillips should have started a game. I've just seen the lineup for the Scotland game. He's playing again. And you kind of go, well, yeah, you can't drop him if you play it that way. And all three of the Italy midfielders will say that. I think it probably will be Jorginho. Okay. Because Verratti will be able to play that deeper role. But I wouldn't be so surprised it was Locatelli even after his performance the other day.
I think up until that, Locatelli was probably the one he earmarked to vacate that position. But them 2 goals that he scored have really made him kind of undroppable, like you said, haven't they?
But look, it's not a bad thing. They want to go deep in the tournament. And even if Verratti is fit for the next game, he's not going to be 100% fit. So if you want to give him 45 minutes even.
That's true.
That depth, it's been a while since Italy had that depth. Remember, this is a team that didn't qualify for the last major tournament. And now we're talking about an outstanding player who is definitely a world-class centre midfielder and a kind of centre midfielder that not many teams have these days. And we're saying, well, can he even get in the starting 11? And he ain't done anything wrong for that. He's fantastic. When you look at the fact that they've got players like him, Chiesa, we talked about last time, Belletti, they've got a lot of players who really would walk into most other teams in this tournament, and they're still pushing teams aside 3-0. Wales are probably going to be their biggest test, looking at what they've played so far. It would be really interesting to see if they do the same thing again, because I wouldn't put it past them. They just look professional.
I've not seen any update on the Chiellini injury yet, but that could change the shape quite a bit if he's not fit enough. Was it Acerbi came in for him in the 24th minute or something? He held his own, to be fair. Yeah, that's true. I don't know how much that had changed their shape for the game in Wales, against Wales rather. But they didn't look like there was any defensive concern other than Chiellini going off, to be fair. It wasn't the biggest test for them. And I think that's the thing for Italy. If they have a really stern test against a really sort of fluid attacking team, how will they cope? And that's going to be intriguing to see in the next rounds, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But they're not lacking leadership even without Chiellini. They've still got Bonucci who will really push that motive that Chiellini does of getting people fired up, getting that defence organised. And they've always been good for that, Chiellini and Bonucci. They're very organised defenders. And although we saw the kind of last-ditch tackles that Chiellini was making in the last game week, really, they don't rely on doing things like that because they haven't got the pace to do it anymore. So instead, they've just got such good organisation. And then even behind them, they've got arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now, and who, again, is just going to go on to be unbelievable, you'd imagine, in Donnarumma. So I've got a lot of confidence in Italy because I'm failing to see a weak area in the pitch. I think Berardi is taking some time to really engage, but he's active and looks threatening. I think he's probably been a bit wasteful at times. But they've got so many options on that right flank. They could play Chiesa there. Got Bernadetti on the bench as well. And I think Berardi will come a lot better once he settles down a bit, but he looks like he's probably trying to take on a bit too much sometimes. But other than that, I mean, that's me properly reaching for something to criticise him on, because actually he's put in a couple of decent performances. Immobile has got a goal in both games, which is what he would want to see. And Insigne just looks electric, and that I think I can't see how someone gets past Italy right now.
You've not even mentioned Spinazzola or Di Lorenzi as well. Wing back, they've done brilliantly too. So I think the impressive thing for me is how many leaders, if you can call them that, there are in that team. You could pass the armband to any one of maybe 5 players, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Including Jorginho, who isn't really meant to be there. Verratti comes in, he could potentially captain the team. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think he actually has. So they are a team full of quite vocal players, and they all want to win. And that's all going to come together, I think, in the coming stages. There's not any team in the tournament that have got that level of seniority, experience, voice within a team. I think there are so many question marks against some of the other teams that are touted as favourites that that's what makes Italy stand out for me. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see them sort of flourish, not just this tournament, but in the next couple as well.
I do think it, like, other than maybe France, you can find weaknesses in pretty much every team in this tournament, England included. We talked about England's midfield and maybe their centre-backs as well. Portugal, Rui Patricia doesn't quite look the goalkeeper that he has over the last few years. And when Ronaldo isn't really making the runs, then who's occupying that space? All of the teams, France, like we said, their defence at times doesn't look the strongest. At right back, you feel like that side is something that I would really focus in on attacking. Every single team seems to have something that you go, that's what we target here. I haven't seen that in Italy yet, and that's big. And short of, I think, so what, they're through now. Holland are through, but let's be honest. They've walked through based on the fact they're in a very, very poor group. One other team went through yesterday as well, didn't they? Who was that? Oh, Belgium. Belgium went through, didn't they?
Yeah.
So far, Italy are clearly front runners for me.
Yeah, out of the ones that have gone through, I think they've been the most impressive by some distance, I think it's fair to say as well. Netherlands on paper doing okay, but they've not impressed me really either. They've got quite a cushy group, really, haven't they? And they were lucky against Ukraine. And they look, I don't know what it is about them, just chaotic, absolutely chaotic. They've got a few fantastic players. And I think we've always placed the blame at the coach for this because he's just not good enough.
Yeah,
but if somebody could get that team together, they've got a fairly good generation of players. And De Jong did okay. He had some decent touches. He's got mixed some good runs. Obviously, Memphis Depay is such a quality, confident finisher at the minute. And you look at the team and it looks good. And why they're not structured in a way that would get the best out of those players is beyond me. I mean, is it just the coach? It has to be, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think Koeman had them quite well organised, actually. And obviously they got to the Nations League final and he looked like he was turning them around a bit. So it's unfortunate for them that the Barcelona job came up when it did. But I think, look, that they're winning games. They're not going to complain about that. You can only beat what's in front of you. So the fact that they've got a pretty favourable group isn't their fault. I think Depay getting a goal, even if it was a penalty, is really important. That will really kickstart him, maybe. So who knows with them? I don't look at them and feel inspired. Austria were dreadful. And they're another side that I think have really let down. I think you can look at the likes of them, Switzerland and Turkey and think all of those could have been dark horses. Probably Denmark too, but obviously it's a bit of a different circumstance with them. You can understand why they've gone out the way that they have. But the other three, you thought, okay, let's see what they can do. Can they upset the apple cart a little bit and kind of challenge? And they've just been awful, really. I thought yesterday Holland had such an easy job, really. They got it done.
I think so. I'm going to press you now just before we go.
Go on.
In terms of like players that have impressed you the most, I'm guessing you're going to say some Italians have impressed you more than most, but is there anyone else you could say, do you know what? I didn't expect that from them, or what they've brought so far has really impressed me. For me, I didn't expect Spinazzola to be as good as he's been. I think he's gone forward brilliantly. But the player for me that's been the standout, and I'm pleased to see him performing, is Patrick Schick. Scored again today, and he looks like a complete finisher at the minute. So I don't know what's changed for him, but he's in good form. So I think he's probably an early bet for sort of golden boot, potentially.
Well, we talked about him last time, I think, because I said to you, obviously, he signed for Roma after a really good debut season in Serie A and looked like he was going to be brilliant and never really turned up. Spinazzola's another one who I've seen play for Roma and think he's decent, but I've never seen him play the way he has. I don't think he's a surprise package because he's a world-class player, but Lukaku, to me, has really stood out.
Yeah, true.
He's just looked brilliant. He's looked unplayable at times. weirdly, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think the player that's impressed me most that I wasn't expecting was Calvin Phillips still. I think his performance is the one that stands out to me the most, almost, because it was a way that I've never seen him play. He was easily England's best player, controlled the game, was very intelligent in the way he played, broke the game up perfectly, got forward when he needed to. And I think really he's the one that I think a lot of England fans would have gone, oh, okay, didn't see that performance come in, because he raised a lot of eyeballs being on the team sheet. So hopefully he'll do the same again for us against Scotland today, because and he is starting. So
yeah, I think Scotland's the perfect sort of game for him to take it by the scruff of the neck, because he was kind of all action, wasn't he, in the first game against Croatia? And he's going to need to be against a pretty talented Scotland midfield. They've got a better midfield than England on paper, haven't they? Who else is in their midfield? McGinn, of course, yeah.
You forget my man.
Potentially, I think Billy Gilmore might be starting as well. I don't know. I've not seen the team. He is.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That three, I think, is right for Phillips to come up against. I think any other player from the midfield selection might fold a bit easily in the intense heat of a derby, which is what it is essentially, isn't it? So I think he'll impress again. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I hope so.
But we'll see. But that's it for this wave of matches anyway, mate. Appreciate you taking the time out to chat to us. Thanks to anyone watching. We'll speak again next time when England have played, because they're playing tonight as we speak. And there's quite a few. Yeah, we'll see. And there's obviously going to be plenty of discussion about England's next steps, whether they play really well or terribly, to be fair, because there always is. But until then, mate, thank you so much. And we'll speak soon.
See you later.